for it. Welcome everybody to the May. It's May, huh? Look at that. May Loki community call. My name's Ed. All I got for an intro. I'm looking for the doc. So there's not a ton on the agenda. So I'm gonna hand it right over to Ivana. Let's see here. Let me put the link to here. Yeah, somebody already did that. Yeah, please. Anybody add stuff that they would like to talk about? Anything is fair game. So we don't have much there, but Ivana, why don't you show us some cool demos to kick things off?
Sure. So today I would like to show you 2 new improvements that we've been working on. And I hope that these features are going to improve your logging experience in Grafana. And the first feature, which is download logs, is implemented. But the second one, which is logs navigation, is still work in progress. So all the feedback is welcome. And I'm going to start and show you the download logs. So that was one of the more requested features that we've had. We have decided to add options to download logs in the panel inspector or the Explorer inspector. We used to have there only option to download CSV, but now when you run query and you get the result, if your results include logs, you are able to just download them by clicking on the download logs button, and they are downloaded in a text format. Let me get them here. And basically, this is how it looks. You have here some meta information and just log lines. So that's the first thing. And moving on to generally improving logging experience in Explorer. So there were a couple of issues that our users were mentioning.
Ivana, quick question: where does the text file end up if you click download?
In downloads folder.
Oh, okay. And do we want to open it to questions as you do the features, or do you want everyone to hold questions till the end?
Oh, we can do questions now.
Right.
If you have any questions related to download logs. It works basically for all logging data sources. So if you have your logs also in other data source that supports log, you can use it as well. Also in logs panel, you can use it.
Did you? It is awesome, by the way. I've had a few use cases for this, but a related use case is a quick way to copy to the clipboard. Have you considered a similar button for just rather than having to download a file, just copy the whole thing to the clipboard?
So we've been considering a couple of options regarding copying everything. We didn't consider it because we had already in Inspector the place where you could download CSV, and we wanted to keep it kind of all together and not have it spread all over the Explorer. However, there is Jess has worked on, when she was working on logs navigation design, she was exploring the idea of having like ad hoc interactions with individual log lines. So if you would hover over the log line, you would have kind of like options to interact with it. So there would be an interaction to also download or copy that line.
I have a question more relating to, because I know that you're going to talk about pagination too today. And are you able to, is it like the current page, right, or the current set of data that you're viewing, or is it like all of the logs that match that query in that time period? So as opposed to, the first 1,000, would it be all of them within the 1 hour?
Yes, so how we decided to do it is that we run query. If you, like when you hit the limit, let's say you hit the limit in your first 4 seconds and your range was 1 hour, you are able to go to all the, like click on the button and request all the logs. So the logs that start with the timestamp that previous ended and continue with the next one. So that's how we did it, because otherwise we were hitting the max line limit.
Cool.
So any other questions, especially from our community attendees?
Also,
Okay.
I would like to say that the idea with copying everything in clipboard is like, I like the idea. Maybe we could create a feature request in GitHub and explore this if users would like it more, or if it would be like easier to interact with.
What typically happens to me, the use cases I have around this are taking a log line and posting it in Slack as part of communicating, usually troubleshooting something. And the individual log line copy actually would meet the criteria of a lot of times what I'm trying to do. So right now I just like drag over the line and copy it. So having a button for that would, I actually don't know that I have a use case is well defined for downloading like all 1,000 log lines to the clipboard. Yeah, I think an issue around discussing those use cases would probably be a great next step.
I had such a case just yesterday, for instance. A colleague of mine had a script that passes the logs and extracts some data. And so he wanted to have an extracted log. And unfortunately, all he could have was CSV for the moment. But so I'm really happy to see the download happen soon. But for concerning the copy to the clipboard, I think sometimes you need to have some context also. So maybe not 1,000 lines, but sometimes I think if we could have like what's visible on the dashboard, or maybe 10 lines, something could be enough and better than just the single line. Don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Ivana.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think it makes total sense. I will create an issue or like feature request for this, so we can look at it and add it to our backlog. So I guess I can move to the second improvement, or second, I wouldn't call it feature, it's a couple of features together, but solving one problem, which is interaction with logs. So when we are running log queries, quite often our users hit the line limit. And I have seen a couple of questions, even on our Slack or on community sites, that users weren't aware that you can set the line limit. And they are just like confused why they see just like 10 seconds, 19 seconds of log if they request within 1 hour range. So we have decided to, or we are trying to improve it in a couple of ways. First way is improving the messaging, or adding more info and more context about the fact that you are hitting line limit, how much time is covered. And we used to have a different name here, so we have renamed it in the same way as you can see here. So it's kind of more closer for you to see that you probably can increase the limit that has been reached. So that's one thing. The second thing is that you run query, you hit the limit, you see only 19 seconds of your results, and you would like to see more logs. And in the past, or like currently, it's kind of hard to do. You have to go either like to manually here, or sometimes if you have absolute range, you could use the arrows, but it didn't work very reliably. So we have decided to add, and you are able to just go click on it and request all the logs. You are requesting basically the same time range or time span as you requested before, but with the new time range that starts where the previous one ended. So that's one thing. Let me open the inspector. And so we expect our users to probably be searching for some logs, so interact with this navigation and maybe go like into the older pages. So we have decided to cache previous results. Currently, we are caching. As you can see, there is no request here. That's what I was trying to show with opening the inspector. We are caching last 5 requests that you have run. And therefore, you are not re-requesting the same logs over and over again. So that's the second thing. And the last thing is that when you have a lot of logs in the past, you had to, when you were on the bottom, you had to scroll to the top. By the way, everything is slow because I'm running Docker and screen sharing, so everything takes much longer. But instead of scrolling up, you can use this new button that will take you to the top of your logs container. And you can flip logs result, and the navigation is going to flip in the same way, so you can see it in the same way as you see the logs. And that's all from me.
This is super cool. Can you also scroll through them, like the different cached pages as well, or do you need to click on the side?
You need to click, because like if you are requesting more logs, so your line limit is pretty high, you could crash the browser. So we were trying to avoid that.
Okay. Cool.
How does question I had earlier was like, if you had multiple queries, does it handle that sometimes one will have hit 1,000 lines and another won't? Did you play around much with those kinds of probably edge cases, I guess, but use cases?
So it's not going to affect logs navigation, but it's kind of a separate problem that we know about and we want to tackle. And that's the fact that when you have 2 query rows, your line limit doubles because you are requesting, like I have 500, so you are requesting 500 there, 500 there. And if you receive 600 logs, you don't know where are they from. So did you get 300 and 300 or 500 and 100? So we want to tackle that, but it's not going to affect navigation because we are just basically showing the results as we would show before. But that's a very good point. There's also a couple of feature requests related to this that we've looked at.
Thank you. This is cool. But I have one, like usually when I use the Explore section, like it defaults to like show me that like the time range is like the last hour. And then if I search for something and I want to, and like I run into the line limit and I want to see logs from like the start of that hour, it was very useful before, how it worked before, where you could just zoom in the actual graph to select the narrower time range. But in this case, you would have to click on that older logs for quite a while in order to get back to the beginning.
So just if I understand, you are referring to when we had histogram that you would have like full 1 hour there? Yeah. Yes, so histogram was not part of this scope, but we know about it. We are still trying to figure out what would be the best way, how to solve it. It's also related to the fact that running, if I recall correctly, running Loki query that would show you full histogram could be expensive, and users should be notified about it if we are doing it. So we shouldn't just run queries for histogram just like that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you for a second, because this was actually a good topic last month's call, and this is why I was pinging Ivana about this, because there's a really good idea that came out of this last month. So I'll recap it just a little bit, because I was a little more animated last time. It's probably more entertaining to watch last month's video. But the histogram is a unique challenge for Loki, and in a couple of ways. One, because I think every other logging system, most that I'm familiar with, have this as like, an expectation, right? It just works. You get this full time window histogram. It also exploits, one of the trade-offs that Loki makes in how we do indexing, because that query can be very expensive to calculate. So like filling the full histogram, especially when you're running like filter expressions and things, is hard for Loki to do. So we've not wanted to do it for that reason by default, because it would be kind of a burden on the back end. But I think the compromise that came out last time that I wanted to chat with you about, Ivana, was basically, adding a button, a link in the histogram for people to on demand just be able to run what it equates to is a metric query of basically count over time or rate, one or the other, for whatever your query is. So that, I think we kind of all agreed, would be really kind of a nice compromise, because if you want to see the full histogram, right, if that's going to be helpful in your query paths, you're either going to just write the query yourself and do it manually, so it's going to get run anyway. We might as well just sort of shortcut that experience to make that a lot easier. So I think that's still kind of our current best idea for a compromise for, the trade-offs that Loki has around indexes, but still be able to build a useful histogram on demand background.
Yeah, I missed the last month community call, but yeah, I think that's a great idea how we could solve this problem.
Like seeing the full histogram, like that's one thing that would be nice to have. But I think also just to be able to select the time range instead of having to manually specify the time up in the time range box, it makes it much quicker to just zoom in. And like I'm thinking if there was like a different, just as like a slider underneath the graph where you could just select the time range within the full range, like it doesn't have to show the actual histogram, but just provide some way to just quickly adjust the time, like which time range you want to zoom in on.
That's actually a very good point as well, because we are basically calculating what is the range and showing it off instead of taking the range that you have requested. So I think that it would be quite easy fix for this. So yeah, I will try to find an issue and post it here. I feel like there's a discussion on the feature requests related to histograms. So if you would be okay to writing your thoughts on this, it would be awesome to have it documented there as well.
I created an issue for it, but then it was closed because of a duplicate, because the issue already existed. But it was more talking about the histogram, but yeah.
But yeah, we are definitely aware of this, and it's definitely something we are talking about and thinking about how to fix this.
Okay, thank you.
I'll write some notes down here. Thanks, Roger. That's great feedback. That was similar feedback that we had last month too. If I go back and rewatch myself, I'm gonna have to eat some of my words, because I was sort of talking about like how I don't use the histogram, right? Like I didn't see. So I apologize, because the histogram, many people have pointed out lots of value in it, specifically around exactly that, right? Like it's a modified and improved perhaps time selector that you don't have to then go type in a bunch of numbers into a date time picker. So
I highly recommend watching last month's. It was awesome having Ed told in detail why he was wrong, and
I'll go back and
having to agree with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny about this is the technical problems that lead into this, right? Which is my perspective, but also the challenges around how we've been represented in the UI. Like right now, I'm pretty sure that on community.grafana.com, there's an open issue it's worded like somebody saying, it can't see logs after an hour. I would bet like a buck on that it's probably the 1,000 log line limit. And so it's still an unsolved problem for us. So I'm really happy to see the UI improvements, like just the words there that talk about having, some percentage of your logs returned, I think is a huge, step in helping with that. Then I think the next steps are, making the histogram useful for showing actual log volume. I think the on demand for that, but to your point, Roger, like even without that, just having a mouse-based time selector is a very useful feature. So somehow I think I'd like to enable both of those. The truncating the histogram window was an effort to help people understand that it was sort of more confusing when they saw just a little bit of logs at the one side and then most of it was blank in the histogram, where they're like, where are my logs? So this helped in that direction, but then removed the functionality that you were using. So I think we're still moving forward into a direction to make the best out of this. So appreciate all the feedback and the input on that for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, we do pay attention to community folks. So this is how, or one really good way to get your thoughts and voices heard. So we love having you guys come up and tell us what. Well, I wasn't going to quite put it that way, but yes, do that.
Thank you, Ivana. Awesome. Really excited to see paging support for sure. Like, I have found myself able to, we use Loki, right? Like, yeah, that's good intro there. But, I've basically learned how to use Loki within the constraints of 1,000 log line limit. And that usually looks a lot like removing log lines that I don't care about. So a lot of filter expressions of not equals this, not equals that. And that works well for me, but there are still, I find myself still in use cases where like, I just need to scan through logs. I don't know what to remove, and paging is the only way to effectively do that. So, and there's lots of other use cases too, where paging is going to be, well received. Very excited.
Ed, on that comment, a problem that I've noticed recently that maybe a similar thing with the fetch older logs kind of comes into is that if you do have a lot of filtering and you get down to a very specific query and you go, there's the problem I was looking for. What preceded that is difficult to find.
Yes.
Because there's no way to say like, okay, within this stream set now, give me like 2 lines of context with it. You have to go back to the kind of the unfiltered view and view all the logs to really be able to see what preceded that.
Yeah.
Once you start adding,
or you can highlight it on the date picker, which is what I usually do.
Yeah, or you highlight the date picker. Yeah.
Or highlight it on the. Yeah, no, totally right. Like that's the downside of you get all the way down to where you find an interesting thing, and then it's like, okay, I need more context now. And yes, you find it like not everything unwinds and winds nicely enough to avoid needing paging. Definitely.
So I am wondering, because we have a feature, the log context, where if you use filter expression, you can see basically the logs without that filter expression that have the same labels. So I am wondering, and maybe asking you, Zach, like if you have ever used it, if you knew about it, if not, maybe we should figure out like why.
I do, but and I haven't quite figured out what the pattern is. It's not always available. And it seems to be depending on how I structure the filter. So maybe it's when it starts applying to multiple label streams or something, but there's time periods where I can't get the show context to appear. And that's where I'm suddenly like, crap, how do I get the 2 lines around this now?
Yeah, I think I know because couple weeks ago I found an issue that on front end we are basically just showing context if you are using the normal quotes and not the backticks.
So that might be it, because I've been using the backtick a lot lately. Okay.
So yeah, I was working on fixing it, but it ended up being a little bit more complex. But yeah, tip for today, use the double quote.
Of the backticks.
I guess I had the same. I had the same misunderstandings also with this feature. But to have a bit more context, also I guess with some integration with tempo, could be there could be some ways to explore the logs another way. I did not manage to. I can have the traces in Loki to go and see the trace number in Loki to go and see the full trace in tempo, but I did not manage to have it the other way around and see all the logs concerning one trace. And I think that could be a nice way to explore.
Yeah, this so traces to logs exists. I didn't configure our environment, but the button is there. But and I started down this road, but I didn't finish. But the problem with the way we use it, or the way that I think it's implemented now, is it selects a log stream, and then the time window I think is like plus or minus a few minutes. And I was asking if we could, and that ends up just giving you so much context that it doesn't really help you understand if that relates to that cycle or that span in the trace. What I was wondering what that would look like, because I believe that the span knows its start and end time in absolute terms. Could the traces to logs button actually run a log query with extremely precise start and end times of the span itself? That seemed interesting to me. I wonder, Herb, if that would help you, basically only show me log lines that occur between the however many milliseconds that this span existed.
Yeah, I did not wrap my head around the whole way to do it. I see there's a lot of problems with it, and I don't blame the tools. It's rather my understanding of what I want to do. But yeah, what you're saying could be one way. I'm not sure.
I'm also wondering, because David demoed today this new integration between, when you are running queries for tempo, currently you can only search for trace ID. But what we did is that in the tempo data source settings, you can link the Loki data source. And then if you go to the Explore and you want to run tempo query, you can actually run Loki query. You have to specify the regex on how to, what is the trace, what is the pattern, but it then gives you the list of all traces, basically, and you in the table with the log message. I am looking for that, and maybe I can, I can show you or I can send here a pull request, and there is actually a video or like a GIF.
Yeah, that would be great, because I think I've seen it, I tried it, and I failed. It worked well one way, but the other way didn't manage to make it work.
I saw a comment from Zach in the chat.
Yeah, sorry, since everybody's talking, I was to the point about seeing just the logs that you're interested in. The time range is one thing, but the other piece of that might be that, and granted, you have to log enough trace ID in your log statements for that to work. But if the trace ID regex automatically got copied into the Loki query, that'd be a nice time saver.
Yeah. I don't actually know how that it selects the search, the labels for the query.
You have to set it up in the data source on the tempo side. You tell it exactly which labels you want copied over.
I feel like we could probably handle like an idiomatic use case, right? Which would be like, something like log format or JSON, which tells you how to find the trace ID, right? And if all of your logs are structured in such a way, like you'd be able to extract that. And then kind of similarly for more precise timings, like Ed was talking about, like that'll work if you basically have a way to synchronize the timestamps coming out of tempo and Loki, right? So like Promtail, for instance, would have to ensure that was the exact time period. And so I think that the time periods are recorded in the spans in process, but like, so there could be a little bit of difference there. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer for how to like backlink these things super effectively right now, or I haven't figured out how we would do that. But we might be able to get something working that works for like, most use cases like pretty well, and that might be totally fine.
This is, yeah, the traces to logs, I don't think we've have a ton of feedback on. I know that ourselves, we've not, spent a ton of time yet to sort of dig in. So would love to hear more use cases. But I'm not sure. What issue did you link here, Ivana? If this is a good one for it. Okay, no, that's I wonder what the best place to categorize or to capture the log feedback is. We need another issue for that. We can add an action to follow up and add something here.
Yeah, the video that Ivana linked it shows the regex expression, so that could literally just be added right into your Loki query, since it has to be present to find the trace anyway. Yeah.
All right, great stuff. All right, I'm going to move on to the only other topic that we have here, unless anybody has any other comments or feedback on UI stuff.
Just one quick thing. Everybody who got here through the agenda document. So if you guys have items you want to discuss or questions or anything, please add them to the agenda, and we'll get to them next.
Yeah, and that's fun for us too, because we don't have to like figure out, oh, what have we been working on? What do we want to demo or show? It's it's really fun for us to like see how other people are using Loki, because a lot of time we realize that people use Loki a little bit differently than we do internally, and it helps us discover things like, like not to, beat that dead horse, Ed, but like the histograms, right? Or like or like when everyone yelled at me about the tailing, because I don't use tailing personally very much.
Oh yeah,
but everyone else does.
I do. Yeah.
Exactly. So like that stuff's fun for us too, right? To
yeah, I mean the use
engage.
cases for Loki, which is why it's going to take over the world, right? Is they're unlimited, but it really helps us to get feedback from people and like what works well for them, and really the what works well feedback is my favorite, but also the what doesn't work well feedback is welcome too.
How can we make it look better? Opportunities for improvement, I think, is the current business speak for that.
All right, so Cyril couldn't make it. He's been working on custom retention. The PR is merged. We are in the process of basically testing it through our environments. I think we've made it as far as dev and looking into our operations environment. So this is the ability to define stream matchers and set retention, and it will change the behavior. So currently retention in Loki is a two-step process. There's something that has to maintain the index, which is a table manager. And then there's something that has to maintain the object store, which is typically a lifecycle policy provided by the object store provider, like a TTL and S3. This would change that to make retention Loki's responsibility fully. You'd remove your TTLs and you'd be able to set retention per stream. And it is working. So I would say there's a good chance, I'm not sure when 2.3 will be released, but there's a good chance that we'll have it. I mean, it will be in 2.3. The question about what sort of level of maturity we assign to it, I'm not quite sure yet. But that's my update on retention. But it is merged into main now. So I would encourage anybody that wants to check it out, that's feeling interested in helping us test stuff and make sure it works right, please do. it.
Yeah, I feel like
the
that's
last
been
thing
one
I
of
had.
the most asked for Loki features for who knows how long. Per stream, retention, that sort of thing. So we're pretty excited about it.
What about it, community folk? Does this float your boat? Or do you have other stuff on your mind? This is your moment.
Everybody for joining today. Good turnout. I'm very excited to see.
I had a question coming back to the log view from Ivana, since I missed part of it, but I tried it out on the master branch, and I noticed I was really uncertain if it was just because it was still in progress or not, since I know you were merging lots of PRs for it. I noticed, though, that in order to get the, hey, view older logs or fetch more logs button, you had to scroll like all the way down to the edge of the current log format to see it, even though the paginated pieces sort of show up in their own scrolled frame on the right. And so it seems sort of odd to me because you didn't immediately see that there was a button to fetch more logs unless you went way down to the bottom of the page. So I just thought I'd maybe offer that as a feedback.
Yes, so that's a good feedback. It's so on my branch it's already fixed. It was kind of work in progress. I have decided to like split it into different PRs, and we are going to have actually like a sticky navigation. So it's going to have size of one window approximately, but it's going to be like sticky, so you won't have to scroll to the bottom. That wouldn't be very user friendly.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've been telling my team that this feature is coming, and they're very happy.
Glad to hear that.
Right. Happy to even answer questions, whatever anyone has on their mind. Otherwise,
So just wondering, anything else that we should be aware of from Grafana 8, Ivana, that relates to logs and Loki?
Let me think. I think I presented most of the thing. Another thing is the PR that I have linked, which is better interaction between Loki and Tempo. We are having a bunch of updates for tracing and node graph, but I think for Loki specifically, nothing else.
All right, and as long as we've got people here, what do you guys think of the Loki label browser that was part of 7.5? Do you guys have any feedback on that? We would love to hear it.
It was a fantastic improvement. The old one, sometimes like you had trouble getting to all the labels. People didn't understand it. It wouldn't multi-select, so people didn't, on my team, didn't even understand that they could select more than one.
On my side, people were quite lost first time they landed on this page, but after once they've understood, it's really great.
So do you think we need to add more help, like more explanation text within the label browser for people who are seeing it for the first time? Do you think it's like not intuitive? Like, how could we make it better?
It's more like they were used to something else. But it's quite self-explanatory once you understand it's not what you used to have, and you understand why you can't find your usual buttons.
Okay, cool.
I would want to, if it's possible, and I assume Loki can do this on the query, is the labels, since you can select any of them, they don't all make sense as a stream though. So if you select one particular application but it doesn't have another label, that label is still in the picker, and you can choose instance IDs and all sorts of labels that will give you 0 results, right? Because there is no stream with that combination. if there was a way to pre-filter that, or sorry, pre-filter, on the fly filter them based on your selections, would be really cool.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. We could like gray out the ones that don't meet the intersection.
Right.
With that.
Because I know which combinations there are, but most of the rest of my development team have no clue which of these go together.
Yeah, Loki also knows via Series API. You can like tell, you can like request.
You want
right,
to tell the story of the Series API, Owen, and the challenges. So I thought the label browser did this, but
no, I don't.
I think, like, I'm pretty sure it does that.
the reason why it wouldn't be doing that, Owen can tell the story about why the Series API might not be helping you here.
Is Owen being punished? Are we I mean,
you guys are picking on me. It
hazed?
only seems fair.
Working with that is punishing enough.
Ooh. I mean, are we hazing Owen? I'm game, but
The long
just to be
story
clear.
short is that the Series API is rough. Like the indexing in Loki isn't quite enough to know values easily. So what happens when the Series API is called, it will download a chunk for each series to be able to see what values existed for the label name. So the label names are in the index. What that means is that call happens asynchronously within the browser. It's when you type in a label. So this hurts more on certain deployments than others. So like the number of labels you have, the number of streams you have, and the time window of your range selector when you do this. So if it's not filtering for you, it's possible, and you could check this by opening up the, if you open up the developer tools in the console, you'll see it send to the Series API query. It's possible that query is just not coming back fast enough with a result to do that filtering. There is actually, there's a lot we can do here. It's just been not a high priority. It's kind of worked well enough, but that's not a great experience, right, for it to sort of inconsistently apply. But I think that depending on, like, one sort of pro tip here would be always start with the most restrictive label you can think of, right? Like always start with the label that you think will return the fewest number of matching streams. And that sort of lowers the workload. But so I'm either wrong about what I thought it did, or it's this case where the Series API is just not able to return fast enough.
I just pulled it up internally. I don't think it's. I guess I can check the.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right
tab.
now. I'm not seeing any change from after having selected.
Oh no, there's a series. We're hitting the Series API. Maybe we're not. We're definitely hitting it. But it looks like we're not. Excuse me. It could be tied into the UI a little bit better, but the calls are going through. Ed's totally right. Yeah. Also, there's like the fun tidbit of like, what did Owen do? Do you remember that, Ed? It was like a year and a half ago. I did this PR into Loki, and like I thought I was doing something good, and basically we need to pull like a single chunk for every stream to figure out what the labels are. Now, in the far future, what we want to do is like make this knowable at the index layer, which means this would be way, way more efficient. But for now, we basically need to take these labels, which speaks to Ed's point of use the most restrictive labels you can first. And so it would grab all of the, like one chunk for every stream, basically. I'm going to have to download that and then check the labels. And I think the first time we did this and we like really opened this up, I had a bug in my code, which made it iterate through every single log in every chunk that we pulled. And then needless to say, once we rolled it out to one of our larger internal environments, like everything started falling over. And it felt like that scene from Tommy Boy where Chris Farley's like, "What did you do?"
I think I'm trying to see. So let me show this.
But I think we could tie this together a little bit better in the UI, and then we have some knobs to turn in the future that we're already kind of aware of on how to make this like a lot more efficient. It's kind of the TLDR here.
So if I click job, I have to select something, but when I do select something, it will reduce the set of labels that are then selectable. So now I can only pick something that has like a cluster.
What version of Grafana is this on master?
This would be master, yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm on 7.5. It's definitely not doing that there. So okay, I'll check it out.
Interesting. Yeah.
So by the way, this was merged, like it's definitely in 7.5. I think like from the when it was first released in stable version, it supported this.
Interesting.
Yeah, it does this. It behaves the same way on my version. So it's Grafana 7.5.3.
Huh.
Yeah, I just checked too. I didn't realize that it was being grayed out. I thought that it wasn't. But
Sorry.
my eyes aren't as good as they used to be.
Sorry,
I guess.
Zach. Closed. Already fixed.
So
that would be my best guess, though. Is check your network connections that are from the browser, and it's possible it's sending the series query and it's taking too long to return, or timing out, or never returning, or something. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll check it.
And it only triggered when I actually selected. So clicking the label alone wasn't enough. I had to select a value, and then it filtered for me. But yeah, I'm not sure.
I was going to ask a question in relation to logs and traces and that pull request that was posted by Ivana. Basically, is there any way, for example, to get the logs for traces that took a certain amount of time? Because when we are troubleshooting something in our system, we are looking into slow calls. Then we would like to see if those slow calls are correlating to something in the logs. And doing a query that gives us yes for traces that took more than this amount of time or had this many spans or something along that line, any properties of the trace, you have these logs associated that you can come through for anything suspicious.
Interesting. I think if I understood that correctly, searching properties of the traces themselves. I wonder if what we log there in Tempo's regard, but
I know
are
we
you
do.
referring to Tempo more than or another system?
No, Tempo and Loki, essentially,
Yeah.
because we are trying to switch from Jaeger to Tempo. And in Jaeger, we can filter out traces that are taking more than this amount of time, for example. We'll see that 20% of our calls are taking too long. What I was wondering if now that we are switching to Tempo, there is any way for this whole integration to work on our benefit, and we say, give us the logs for those traces that took more than this amount of time. Because then we have an integration. We are logging the trace IDs as part of our logs, and we have connection between Loki data source and Tempo data source using that derived field. So it has all those connectivity and data around. I know it spans both of those systems, and not a single one of them has all the information, but that was just a question, since that would ease the whole debugging.
I think so Tempo currently doesn't have any way to ask questions like show me only the traces that took X amount of time.
Okay.
I just asked. Joe's gonna come on join this call. Joe leads the. This is Joe.
Hey Joe.
He leads the Tempo project. So background here, we kind of do this inversely at Grafana, right? Like, if I want to know something about a certain trace, a lot of the time, right? Like, oh, I want to find traces for queries that took longer than 60 seconds. We actually have a lot of this instrumented in our log lines themselves. And so we'll do the query in Loki, we'll find the log line, and then we'll like extract, we'll see that it has a trace ID, and then we'll just use the Grafana integration to follow that into Tempo.
Okay.
So the interesting question here, though, is like, can you bootstrap that in a more automatic fashion? And it's, because in things like Jaeger, right, where you can search on the other dimensions, right?
Yes.
Like, can we automatically, like, can we integrate the opposite way and basically use Loki somehow, for instance, to be able to query properties of tempo? And I know that, Joe, you've talked a little bit about some stuff like this before. I don't know where any of it's landed, but curious if you had any ideas there. Do you understand the... Okay, no. Good,
Sorry.
good, okay.
Sorry.
Usually when I explain things, that's how it works out.
I've been up since 6 a.m. I got nothing on. What do we do here?
I think maybe the simplified question is, can you talk a little bit about what the searching capabilities of Tempo might look like in the future?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So we've talked about adding search to Tempo, kind of actually taking some inspiration from Loki and the ideas of using kind of like parallelization and brute force over heavy indexing. So we're going to start exploring that, I would say, probably in the second half of this quarter. We're going to send one of our developers off to take some of our designs and some of the work we've done towards that direction already and really work on making it mature. Something else that's upcoming that's already in the agent to kind of maybe help with this need before we could create native search is, let me see if I can find the PR. It's not been released yet, but automatic logging. So the Grafana agent, of course, is a common way to push traces and logs and metrics into Grafana Cloud. And there's an automatic logging configuration you can do.
Not just Grafana Cloud anymore, guys. Yeah, just saying, not just Grafana Cloud anymore. It is the Grafana agent now. And it can be applied to other stuff too. But yes, please continue.
Sure. So this automatic logging thing here, let me post a link in chat. So let's say you have applications you don't want to make changes to add like a log line with a trace ID, or you can't because it hasn't been compiled in years and the guy who made it left, 6 months ago. This here will, as traces pass through, Grafana agent will create log lines and push them to a Loki instance, also kind of configured in the same agent. And it might allow for some of this searching capability on applications where it's a bit harder to add right now.
Awesome.
Hey, Joe, next week, would there be an opportunity to talk to you about Tempo stuff in, I don't know, some sort of a call type format?
I don't know. Richie normally tells me that a couple hours before it happens. Let's see.
Well, I've got this amazing invention called a calendar.
Yes. Is it next week? Yeah, the community call is next week. It's 12:30 my time, which is Eastern. I guess that makes it 16:30 UTC. So yeah, anybody who was interested in Tempo was welcome to join us there. Thanks, Diana.
You're welcome.
Good prompt.
This is, I think, not the original question, but it had a question that I had. Does Tempo itself log anything around the data that it ingests that could be useful in querying from Loki to find interesting traces?
No, not except for in the same way that Loki or Cortex do as well, which is to log lines for its own traces, essentially, for its own request with a trace ID. But it doesn't have the ability to export to Loki or even just log kind of like spans in that way.
Yeah. Be a lot cooler if it did, man.
I don't know, man. PRs are welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry to drag you and put you on the spot.
No worries. Take care, Loki people. Be good.
See ya.
Yeah, we're hiring. Everybody wants to get sick burned all the time. I mean, seriously, we are hiring, but the sick burns are for free. You can join the community call for those if you want.
Oh, no. We just save them all for you and Owen, Ed. But yeah, we are hiring. Check out our careers page. It's a great place to work. Love Grafana. So.
I have a question on the download logs feature. We have some users that kind of wants to be able to download logs in order to like put them into some other system. And one of the asks they have is like if you run a query that spans like multiple hosts or like multiple log sources, when they download a log file, they would want the result to be like split into like the separate log files in like separate files. Is that the possibility, or is it just like one log file?
So it is currently one log file. So is it, just if I understand correctly, is it if they run like multiple queries, or if they run one query but it
yeah, one query that returns logs from multiple machines or hosts or like file names?
Yeah, this is currently not possible, but yeah, feel free to add feature request and yeah, we can look at it.
Is your use case like pulling data out of Loki, like without aggregating the streams, for instance, right? Like do you want like one log file for every stream that came into Loki, or okay? So are you like, is this more of like just an export from a backend?
Yeah. So we built a system that does this. I'm just wondering if this is a part of the download log feature, like if this is something that this feature could replace, like if we could replace our own custom solution with this. So I'm just wondering, like, if that would be possible.
My gut tells me that we probably have this like that without touching Grafana itself here. I know this is actually a pretty common ask, right? So on two fronts, both like having Promtail spit to multiple endpoints, right? Maybe a Loki endpoint, then like just an S3 like dump all your stuff there, which I'm not sure if we're gonna do because there's kind of some overhead around that. But
I mean, they don't want to dump all the data there. They just want to, like, if they run a query and like they want a specific like the logs for a specific time range, they just want to be able to like extract it from Loki so that they can put those files into some other system. Like if they want to attach the log from this machine to some bug report or something.
Okay. Yeah. So right now, the best bet might be using like log CLI as a library, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've already built something that you solved. Yeah. I think the question, one thing that's interesting about that is Loki has the potential to lose track of the actual source file. So I think a feature like this would require you to sort of pick what label you'd want to split the result by. But that use case, like what you described of being able to extract data, like especially for ticketing systems and purposes, I think is a lot of what people want. It's usually how I'm wanting to pull logs out of Loki from the UI, is that I'm trying to facilitate a post-mortem doc or a ticket or communicate something to someone. So yeah, I could see the idea of like pick one or two labels or something to split the stream, so when you click download you could get separate files. I think that may be a little bit what you're asking for.
Yeah, I think so.
Idea, like it.
But I mean we have already solved it, so I'm just wondering, like, if it's something you have thought of, basically.
No, appreciate the feedback. All right, we are out of time.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, that was fun.
This is a fun one. Yeah.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you all in a month. Add stuff to the doc in the meantime. There's the Loki Slack channel. We've been busy. It's been a little bit hard to keep up. But... What's that, Diana?
And YouTube comments for people watching us on YouTube.
Oh yeah, lots of thumbs up. Hit that like button. Smash that like button.
No, Ed, no.
All right, see you, everybody.
Bye.